Hey, welcome all back to Middle-Aged Nerds. We are doing another live book club stream tonight. This time, this is part one of our Left Hand of Darkness book club meeting. As you join, please feel free to throw stuff in the chat. We got it up here on the side of the screen. So, without further ado, we're gonna kick this off with our book club meister, Mr. Chase. So, let's get this started, man. What do you want to talk about first?
Well, so I think you guys all have like opinions on it. The big opinion is like because this is a social sci-fi novel instead of like an action romp, there's been zero car chases, zero lightsaber battles, zero uh laser guns in this. Has there been a laser? I think there's been one laser gun, a sonic gun. I think I saw in
Sonic,
there.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, but some people are kind of disappointed. It hasn't even had the left hand of darkness chopped off by a lightsaber. So I think like is this your first time reading any social sci-fi there, Jasani and Scott? I know you guys. I know like Scott. I know you've read Dune before, which is uh, kind of social
I,
sci-fi.
I had I had to start Dune about 5 times before I finally got into it, and the only way I finally got past that first initial part was by doing the audiobook. Um, so it's not my first one, but this is definitely a little, like you're saying, it's a little bit different from the other type of normal sci-fi that you'd like to read, right? Where it's very much more of a social political commentary than anything else, than any like action-packed, Jedi lightsaber kind of stuff going on. Um, I will say so far, I don't mind it. It's actually kind of neat learning about this. I think Katie, you hit the nail on the head in the chat the other day, where it's a lot more looking into like the society as a whole and the world building and that type of aspect. I actually kind of dig it. Digging and like just told Jasani as well, comparing it to games like Myst and Riven and this Outer Wilds and some of the other ones that are out there where you're an explorer trying to figure out what's going on behind the scenes with these societies. I kind of dig it. Jasani
Yeah.
does not agree.
One thing that I will say about it is like the world of like 1950s, 1960s sci-fi is like incredibly misogynistic. Like if you read something by like Asimov from like 1968, it's like so bad that you're just like, well, but then we decided to take the girl along because she was dating someone. And just like, what the? Like, it's really like that world where this book like came in is like incredibly misogynistic. So like to have like a social sci-fi novel that's just like, well, what if gender wasn't even a thing? How do we address that? It's like, it's
Yeah.
interesting.
As I pointed out earlier before you logged on, the main character is rather misogynistic as well. The way he describes the female characteristics that some of the native people have. Like he talks about being shrill or being
And
one of his the way he describes woman or the womanly characteristics is very negative. So he's a very misogynistic character, which maybe is response to the climate that was there at the time,
mm-hmm.
which I found interesting.
Right. So far there's not any like positive female like traits in anything. Like besides maybe like one of them like said like someone was motherly or
Yeah.
like but often like a character would be like I had a hard time picturing them as a caring mother or something like that. But yes, I highlighted that in my reading through it too, is like the fact that like when he does bring up a feminine trait, it's usually in the negative.
Mm-hmm.
Come on, Jasani. I know you're about to explode. What do you
I'm
got?
so yeah. This was definitely a different type of read, right? And I guess the whole socialist, I won't say socialistic, but the whole social sci-fi. I think I underestimated the difference this would be from the traditional, blast 'em, zap 'em, that kind of sci-fi that I'm used to. Um, Maybe I just need to come to grips that I just need some folks to get kicked in the throat for me to enjoy the story, right? Maybe I just have those kind of tendencies. I I'm on chapter 13 now, and I it, it's it's a we talked about this on the chat before, and I agree with Kate's comment earlier. It is kind of an anthropological kind of viewpoint. It's just he's the inspector, or he's the I guess he's the second person. It was a team that went in first, kind of first contact, or they actually didn't make first contact. They actually went and investigated. He's the first person to come and actually make first contact. Um, it just seems dumb. I mean, and maybe it's the character, but it was like, okay, you're making first contact. Of course, there's rules, um, but it seems like he went there woefully unprepared, considering that his job is to try to convince them to join the Acumen. And he goes with little to no proof, right? I mean, other than he has a ship. Yeah, he has that, and they did physiological studies, but it's one of those things where if you're at, I don't know, it just seems like if you're going to make first contact with a society that's not as advanced as you are, you would have come along with a little bit more evidence to show that we are part of a larger society and kind of push your point, because that gets rid of some of the xenophobia that you're kind of seeing between, like, so I'm at the point where he's at where is it? Oh, it starts with an O. What's the name of the country he's in right now?
Yeah, that's
Ogarain?
Orgarain, something like that. So he's there. Um, and I'm kind of comparing the reactions of the whole revelation that we're not alone in the galaxy, that whole viewpoint that he had from the first country he was in to the one. The first country was crazy because he has a Mad King. The Mad King is crazy. He's paranoid. He has all kinds of stuff going on. The second one seemed like they were going to be a little bit more rational, and they were a lot more welcoming to the idea, but they were just as screwed up.
I was getting like a super like Russian vibe from them, like just all like bureaucracy like buried in it, and like, but they also have like a strange power structure, and then like the whole state like absorbs your finances or whatever. Yeah, that's a weird cultural thing too.
Yeah, I just don't think I don't know. I guess I watched too much Star Trek dealing with first contact and things like that for me to really just be able to embrace the fact that you send this person 17 light years, and he all he has to show for him is a communications box to say, look, I'm from another world.
And some photographs.
And some photographs. Believe me, join us. And I don't know. I think he deserves everything that's bad happening to him. I'll be honest.
Well, so I'm interested, like Katie, you said like this is like one of your favorite books. So like you're like throwing down the gauntlet. What about this book like speaks to you? Like why does it really resonate with you? Why have you returned to it again and again?
I like the. I mean, I hope I'm not giving stuff away. I really like the relationship, the friendship that develops between the two main characters, and I find that really beautiful. And I just find it interesting. I just find the world so interesting. The mythology she creates so interesting. Maybe it's the same reason I love Tolkien so much, just that whole world that's built and all the stuff that goes into it. And then they just always, whenever I read it, always makes me think. I just find I was listening to an audiobook and I had to stop it a couple times just because it was talking, especially when they get to the various myths and about the yin and yang's almost aspect of it, the duality, the light and the dark, and this is in many ways a culture without duality because they're all one gender, but there are this duality there, and between light and dark, creation and unfinished. And I've always loved the quote, which I think is later on, which is praise darkness and creation unfinished, which I always found really beautiful. And so it's just the writing I find gorgeous, and the descriptions
Right.
beautiful, and I just like the world, I guess. I don't know. But reading it, I mean, the last time I read it was probably about 10 years ago. So reading it now, I'm finding the main character. I don't remember picking up on the misogyny before so much, but sorry, I have to walk to the other room. But this time I do, and so I'm finding him less appealing than I did before.
Yeah.
But,
I mean, I think so. One thing I will say now, the whole book, in my viewpoint, I won't say the whole book. The portion I've read, I'm not going to completely say it's just that I didn't find anything of the book fascinating. Um, I did think it was interesting, like this whole duality of the idea of patriotism. Right, that seemed to be a kind of a reoccurring theme within the first viewpoint in terms of what is actually patriotism, because I think they've actually referenced it, and it's one of those where I noticed that a lot of the leaders in both countries they have this really very narrow focus of what patriotism is in terms of loyalty to the country above that and all others, and it's like versus whether or not the country is living up to the actual betterment, the ideals that are to the betterment of the people. It's like
Yeah.
loyalty for loyalty's sake.
Yeah.
And sometimes that loyalty causes fear. Sometimes that fear begets ignorance. And you saw some of that take place with in terms of how people were reacting just at the notion of we're not the center of the universe. We are, potentially this person is coming from another place. And they come with all these theories to try to say why he is not who he says he is, right? Oh, he obviously is a spy. Obviously he's a shadow spy or whatever the case was. But this whole blind notion of blind patriotism, it'll be interesting if they continue that, if they continue to talk about that as we get past it, going to part two. But I did find that a little bit interesting, especially what you kind of see happening, nowadays.
Yeah.
So one thing that I liked about it is the foretellers. Like I thought like that whole like kind of like side journey thing was like really interesting to like kind of have a mysticism to it. And also like the where it broke off and like gave like the creation myth story about the actual chopping off the left hand or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, does it revisit that as like a motif in the second half of the book?
Not specifically that myth, but it continues to talk about that duality, the light and the dark, and the creation and uncreated, and all that. It definitely and
Yeah.
goes to other creation myths as well.
See, I liked the foretellers. I really
Sorry,
again, I don't. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Kate.
I just had heard the oven go, so I have to dash off. I'm sorry.
All right, no problem, no
No
See you
problem.
worries.
guys later. Sorry.
All right,
I'll
take
talk
care.
to you later.
But
Yeah. Unfortunately, Katie's in Canada, so therefore we are on British Columbia time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but no, you know, so, shit, what was I talking about? I lost my train of thought.
foretellers.
Foretellers. So when they introduced them and they had a little side story that talked about the guy who asked the question about, how long will I live and that whole thing, I actually was getting a little bit excited because I kind of liked that whole aspect. But then they got tropey, right? I didn't like the whole trope aspect of, oh, you asked us the question, but you didn't ask the right question. And I was like, oh, okay, here we go. We're gonna do that. It's like, how long will I live? What day will I die? You'll die on the 19th. Okay, really? Seriously? I mean, it was just like I was a little bit let down by that. I was hoping more. I said, oh, fortune tellers, they're connected to the ether and they can explain. I was looking forward to more with that. I did like the question that the protagonist asked when he got to the foretellers. It was a more direct question. Um, but I just thought they kind of, I don't know. I thought the author kind of took a lazy way out with the whole trope of, oh, you got to ask the right question, got to be specific.
I I actually thought that was like a good question on his part though. Like, you know, it was like in the whole 5 years thing. He could have asked like, will the will this planet ever be part of the Echo Man? And like, yeah, you're like, well, okay, well, 300 years or something like that, you could be, but like that's
Right.
like in the next 5 years, it kind of puts his mission into perspective.
Well, it does, because
Yeah.
then, like what he was saying earlier, he was like, "Well, I could just fuck off, go on my spaceship. I'll come back in like a matter of hours. It'll be 30 some years for you, and then I won't have wasted my time here. I can just come back in
Right.
like a couple hours, and you'll be gone."
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying. I think I think the main when the main character went to the foretellers. I mean, I think he, of course, asked a much better defined question. It was just when they were telling the initial story, I was like, oh, okay, all right, he didn't ask the right question about when he was gonna die. And then when the guy came behind him, I guess his servant or whoever wanted to, because the guy was going crazy. He came back and asked the other question. He was like, so how long will my master live? And it's like, he'll live longer than you.
Yeah.
Again, I was like, oh, all right. You guys are useless. I mean,
So that's where in America they'd be
I,
like, "You prick! I ain't paying you shit."
I want my money. I want my money.
It's monkey paw, man. It's monkey paw. You can't ask the foretellers. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he kept left. I don't know. Yeah. If it wasn't for my loyalty to the book club, I probably would have bailed on this book. It's not my it's not my cup of tea. I'm not. I mean, I'm glad folks are getting some. Not a. It was just. It's just.
That's what book club is all about, expanding your horizons, reading things and finishing things that you never would have normally read or finished. So, like I said, it makes you a stronger reader. You get stuff out of the end of books sometimes that you don't see at the beginning. And yeah, that just yeah, it makes you a better reader, you know.
No, I'm gonna. I mean, I'm committed now. I mean, I'm more than 50% done with the book, so I am going to finish it. Um,
Mhm.
you know, the where I'm at in the book right now. I don't want to give away. I mean, Chase, what chapter are you on?
So I'm in I got 120 pages in. So I don't know what chapter that is.
You're
I
not much
just
further ahead than me. You've just passed like the
yeah,
sex chapter, yeah.
yeah, he just had the dinner party with the at the guy, the Cecilia, this name that starts with an S. I forget what it was. It was like Cecemia or something. He was like the rich man from Ogorin.
Yeah. See,
Ogorin, yeah.
honestly, you could say anything. Just I'm gonna forget it by the time I get to that point anyway. Because with this book,
I
I'm
think
kind of like
I think I'm only like two. I think I'm like 2 or 3 chapters ahead from you.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I'm at a point where with this book I don't care about spoilers. With something like Gideon, I did. This one is just kind of like there's no like action like you were saying before. There's no like storyline to it. It's
Yeah,
just
well, it's
bounces
not
around
plot
and it's
driven.
learning about a
Well,
society. And really, for me, there's no spoilers in that. It's just like, okay, I'll get to that point eventually.
yeah.
So
And that's the thing. It's like this isn't plot driven.
yeah.
The fact that okay, well, is he gonna get them to come to Echo Man or not? Like that's really the chief idea, right? Like, is this guy's journey to try to achieve this thing? But that's not if he achieves it or not is not really the plot. It's not really the reason for engaging with the book.
Hmm.
Like the reason we're engaging with the book is because it brings its own ideas, and the prose, like the prose is really strong, and it kind of builds its own mythology. So it's using all of these interesting things to try to tell this story, and obviously, again, like I said, this story has been really important in the evolution of science fiction fantasy, and it's one of the kind of staples of the older genre. So by reading it, it gives us better insight into what has now come about in other future books that you'll engage with, like reading a book like this in 1968, it directly informs Ancillary Justice or whatever by Anne Leckie, which won the Hugo in 2015 or something. So it's you have a better idea of how to engage with a book like Gideon, which has social science fiction aspects of it, because you understand the history now a little bit better of the genre by engaging with an older book like this.
Yeah, and that's kind of like why I want to go into some of the older school, like this one, sci-fi, is to get a better idea of where it's come from as to where it is now. Right? I think you just kind of hit on that. That's yeah.
I mean,
And
I guess I got to take into account when, like you just said, Chase, when this book was written, right? And kind of what was going on at that particular point in time. I'll tell you, I mean, the only thing that's happening right now in chapter. So Chase, do you care about spoilers or?
I don't really care.
So I mean, the only thing that happens right where I'm at is so I'm thinking about another 2 chapters. So he wakes up and he actually has been arrested. He's in this, he's in that country. He's arrested, and for a whole chapter describing what kind of horrible condition he's in, and how cold he is, and because I guess they have him naked with a whole bunch of other prisoners or whatever. Um, and so it's one of those things where it's like, I mean, I don't dislike the protagonist. I think he's kind of just doing his thing. But I'm just but I honestly, I expected this to happen. I expect this to happen. It's like everybody who was around him was kind of warning him, hey, be careful. Hey, watch out. Your life's in danger. You know, I was surprised that they actually let him out of the first country. When he was sitting there talking to the Mad King, I thought he was gonna get arrested then. And he got out. And it was so funny. I couldn't quite grasp the thought process in terms of trying to accomplish his mission because the Mad King reacted the way he reacted, wasn't very embracive of what he was trying to say. But yeah, he says, I'm gonna let you leave the country, I'll let you go, blah blah blah. No harm will come to you. And even when he did that, despite the fact that his ally just got exiled, he hung around for another couple of days.
Yeah.
And I was like, ah. And so then he goes to the new country, warning him too, hey, expect to happen. People told you for the last several chapters.
Well, and that brings up like the interesting point. Like, so okay, like if you were doing a first contact scenario like that, like where you're trying to bring someone into like your 82 world empire, like would you just show up on the front doorstep with like a fleet like of conquerors and be like,
no. I mean, because that sends a bad message. But there's a mid ground.
I'm sure you should show up with a fucking wingman. Nobody wants to get burned at the stake by themselves. I mean, fuck.
You don't bring them anything that's like that'll give them, because I'll tell you again, I hate to revert back to Star Trek and the whole Prime Directive aspect, but I think that's probably one of the most established first contact protocols throughout most sci-fi shows, and they have those rules for a reason. But when they do decide to make first contact, there is no necessarily holding back of the display of technology. There's a hold back in terms of sharing that technology, because you have to be able to substantiate your claim. Because these guys ask the same questions anybody would ask. If somebody who looked like me and talked like me and they walked on two legs and they came and told me, "Hey, we're from we're from Pluto," I'd be like, "Prove it."
Yeah.
And he's expecting a lot. One of the things he keeps saying is like, "I'm not going to call to my ship because I need to make sure that you're genuine, and we want to make sure that you announce this to your people." He keeps saying over and over again, like what these criteria are for him to actually show the one bit of proof that could actually help his claim. But what society would do that? I think he's expecting too much.
Well, it's the interesting aspect too of this is like this book was written when the original series was actually on television.
Oh, the original Star Trek.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this was what, 70s?
So like if you consider that, right, like how ham-fisted the original series is and like how elegant this book is, like it kind of puts that in perspective. Like if you were literally showing up and on your tube TV watching Captain Kirk, and then like you got to turn around and like like look at the original series of Star Trek, like girls in mini skirts, and like you can't be the captain. Like, no, you can be communication officer, or you can be like a science officer, but then it's like if we take you on an away mission, you're going to be a damsel in distress. Like that is like the level of misogynistic that's like involved in like the world of like the 1968 science fiction, right? Like putting like this book into that category, like it feels like this is like 10 years ahead of it, if not more.
Yeah. I mean, and honestly, I didn't recognize the misogyny in this book until Katie kind of pointed out. I was like, oh yeah, they did say that, because they made a lot of general statements about characteristics of females, kind of apply this whole stereotype. But I mean, but going back, I want to go back to the question you asked a minute ago, Chase, in terms of like how would I, if I was doing a first contact, like how would I manage it? I mean, number one, I would just say high level. If I expect my mission to succeed, I have to bring proof of, number one, of the existence of a larger universe, so that people can start opening their minds up and get their minds away from their own internal craziness. And then number two, what's in it for me, right? Why do you? Because even both sides said that. Like, why would I join? What do you guys want with us? Which brought up suspicion. So you got to bring something, whether it's a cure for a known disease, and something that doesn't give necessarily anybody a strategic advantage over their their enemies or whatever, but something that shows, hey, this is an example of what we have to offer if you're willing to take that leap.
Right.
I just think he came there with a freaking ham radio saying, "I'm an alien," and he's surprised that he gets arrested. I'm just like,
Hey, I'll be right back. I gotta
I'm
put the
open
kids
to-
down. I'll be right back, guys.
no problem.
Well, so but like here's the thing, like if you're actually doing long-term colonization, like like you're legitimate like thinking like, okay, this is going to be our 83rd planet. We've done this before. We've established some protocols of like how to do it. Like I feel like so like you send the inspectors in, right? And the inspectors like get a general like idea for like the psychology. Like that's who you send. You send like psychologists and like cultural like anthropologists and stuff like that, and then you kind of get an idea for them and then like come up with like your first contract scenario. So maybe they're just like, whatever, we send a single individual unarmed as an envoy to present a message of our ideas. He's not even an ambassador, he's an envoy of our culture. And that is how we engage with it. And if he's not successful, it's like we just send another person in 10 to 30 years, right? Like, and then it's like they adjust their strategy. So it's like when you do galactic empire building, you almost are like you work off the long term, right? Like, you're just like, well, they'll eventually come with us. Like, if one single guy doing it off of faith doesn't work, then we start, do the carrot instead of the stick. I don't know.
I mean, okay. So flip that perspective around, right? So you're the inhabitants, right? And you're in charge of a province or a country or whatever. And so this person comes to you, and up about unless he's naked, like he or she looks just like you.
Mm.
They come with very little evidence of what they say, but they're telling you, in order for me to show you my ship and call my ship down, you need to publicly announce this and put it on your radio streams and all these other things.
But he
I mean, what you're saying?
he let Carhide see his ship and everything like that, and like do and like examine his body. Like they said that in the beginning. Like he let people examine him. He let people see his ship. He never hid any of it, And it actually kind of mentioned in there like Carhide and or Gorin like had like different strategies about announcing him to the public or whatever that like he was around. So it was kind of on them.
Well, the first, I would say, yeah, I'd agree with that for the first country. Because they had all that. The second one, because the Carhide had still had his ship, like they had even less to go off of.
Right.
So I don't know. I don't know. I just look. I was like, how else would this have turned out?
Right.
But again, now there's something to be said about the comment you made earlier. They've done this 82 other times. So there's something to be said for, I guess, their current protocol. I don't know. I don't know if the initial investigators jumped the gun when they said they recommended hey, we need to make first contact. I don't know. They seem very, very superstitious, and they got too many internal things going on to be able to embrace a galactic community.
Yeah. One of the things too that I thought was like kind of weird, kind of shifting topic here. They said the lack of males, dominant males, like resulted in less war. And then they like immediately the same chapter, like Tybe, the new prime minister of Carhide, is like starting to like engage in war. I don't know what that is gonna be, and I don't know. I think that's an interesting, again, like a backwards thinking, like a little bit of like thinking like, well, if we were all just women, there wouldn't be any war,
Well,
like.
and I don't know. I guess if I heard Katie earlier, I think I think Ursula, what's her name? Ursula.
Mhm.
It's a little like when.
Yeah. I think she's feminist, right? She's a feminist.
Yeah.
She's a self-proclaimed feminist. So so maybe that was her spin on a character in terms of her own viewpoint. I did think it was interesting though they made the comment about the whole non-gender androgynous aspect of of the world of their world and the benefits that it provided in terms of, oh man, they listed so many. Um, there was no, because they only had mating like 1 2 months out of the year. There was no rape. There were a lot of crimes and other things that it just didn't exist in this world. There was no patriarchal viewpoint.
It takes
so
it takes
therefore
the
there
gender
wasn't.
out of the discussion. It takes it just completely off the
Yeah,
table where you don't know what gender you're going to be next, so therefore there is no man woman, there's just person. And there was a quote there. I wanted to highlight it, but I didn't. A quote there about how that's just absolutely terrifying. Well, from the viewpoint of the envoy, he was like, that leaves you as just being a human, and that's just horrifying.
Well, I think, and I actually agree. Now that's actually I get that, because me personally, I was kind of reading this book and I'm listening to it, and there was a part of me that was very uncomfortable with the conversation about the whole sexuality aspect, because it was just kind of like, well, everything I ever been taught was in terms of mating to procreate, the male female roles, right? In terms of the whole, we're doing this to procreate because we can only do it during a limited cycle or whatever. And the whole viewpoint of, okay, there are no genders, that was tough for my little pea-sized brain to wrap itself around. It was really, really, really rough. But I will tell you, that's, now that we're talking more and more about some of the deeper aspects of the book, I guess I can kind of appreciate the book for kind of having you think about just the whole socio structure of our gender roles in real life.
Yeah.
But it was something that I that.
That's the caramel center of like this whole story. It's like the whole thing is really about like examining gender roles, right? Like, and like the role that those play in like creating a society.
I'm always wondering like what this book would have been like if, because he keeps using the male pronoun, even though he says that there's no real gender. Because I guess their exterior appearance looked more like, outside of that period, they all look more like men, human men. So I guess that's why he keeps using the masculine pronoun.
No.
No.
Kind of like every now and again, he'll say like someone looks like androgynous or someone has like a female aspect. He just uses the male pronoun, and he actually says it in like a bit, like he's using it in like the same context that like you refer to God as a he. And he actually says in the story a couple times that like there's like not really a good translation, and that the male pronoun is often used to refer to like animals or in a derogatory way.
Mm-hmm.
In there too. But I think it was just a stylistic choice to refer to everyone as a he, him for the pronouns, which is like, again, going to like 2015 and Ancillary Justice and Lecky. She's doing a story where like she refers to everyone in that culture with the female pronouns, which is really weird. But it's just like that was the culture of like it's an alien culture. Like they don't have like male female pronouns. Everyone's a she. And like it's like even like to the point where like people who have beards and like you realize that they're masculine like throughout the story, that like they're still referred to as a she, and it's like an intentional thing to like say, why is that important? Like it's a cultural thing. It's interesting.
Well, I think it speaks to like the cultural societal norms that we even use today, where you automatically generically refer to everything as like a he, whereas opposed to in this society where there isn't any, then you just kind of refer to that as a generic. Yeah, that's just the term you use, is he did this, as opposed to he, she, or they kind of thing.
Right.
Good night.
Good night.
See you in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
Ready for school tomorrow?
Never.
High five. You're ready for school now. Crisp high fives get you ready for everything.
True.
You have see. Look, he said true. See.
We're smacking hands.
Yes, it gets you ready for everything.
Why do you think they do it before important sports games?
See?
Performance up 5%.
They do it everywhere. High fives get you ready for everything.
Guess I'm ready for sleep now.
You are.
Ow!
Good night. Love you.
Love you.
But yeah, I think that's just and going back into the misogynistic society, like kind of what it was back in the day when the book was written, I think that's more of a statement that she was making, that using that he as the generic, just that's the first thing you go to. I kind of feel that that's more of a statement on that type of thing more than anything else. It's just that's what you automatically think of as just he, if there's a question.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know. I'm going to challenge that a little bit, because when you're talking about forces of nature, when you're talking about ships, we automatically refer to them as she and her.
It's true, but say you come across
Right.
say you come across someone that you're not sure what gender they are. Have you ever that happens?
I just
right?
go like, hey, you.
But if you're not 100%, I don't know about you guys, but if you're not 100% sure, your mind will automatically trend towards the male.
I don't know.
Mine does. Mine specifically does. I don't know if that's just how it was raised or how your brain works automatically, but if they're at this middle point, you're kind of like,
honestly, if I can't tell, if I ran into somebody who seems completely androgynous, I don't know. I think I'd probably lean more towards female. I would probably. It just depends. I mean, if I can't tell by the name.
Occasionally, when we get online, I'm like, is this a 12-year-old boy or is this a girl?
Dude, prime example was that one that Sherpa does through that Destiny chat that one night.
Yeah, I'm like, this is either like a 12 or 13-year-old little guy, or it's a woman. And like almost at like one point, I was like, hey, just tell me your pronouns real fast, so I just make sure I'm getting them right. But I was just like, listen a little bit longer and I'll figure it out, and I did.
Yeah, and that's it. But it's for me, my brain will automatically trend towards that male part until you find out a little bit more, and then your brain balances back out. It's interesting, and I don't know if that's like they're saying, is that a societal thing, or is that just a natural thing that just automatically occurs? Who knows?
I think it's a cultural thing, especially a lot of nowadays it's a very patriarchal kind of
For sure.
setup and mentality.
Sure.
I mean, again, there's exception to every rule, but I mean, I think that's if you're looking for a source of where that potentially could come from. I think in terms of societal norms, it's still, unfortunately, things are still in a very patriarchal format, and I think that's why that might be the default setting a little bit.
Oh, for sure.
But I mean, but I was thinking about though. So let's say that this book, let's say the author decided to flip this over a little bit. Let's say that the society was not like, okay, they look like maybe androgynous men. Let's just say they look very feminine. And then of course, when they got to that moment, that period of time where they can actually mate and have kids, would it have kind of been a different take on it if they were obvious, they were like females that they appeared to be females that may turn into males during that mating season? Would that have done anything? Would that have given the book a different spin?
Wait, what's the question? Because that's exactly what happens, right?
Well, again, it goes back to, so when I'm reading a book and I'm listening to the book, it's an audio book, of course, but that I'm listening to. But because he keeps using the male pronoun, even if he describes them as, oh, they're a very beautiful male, they're a very beautiful man, or a very beautiful, because he keeps using the male pronouns, I'm still envisioning guys. And so again, that period comes in and they become either male or female. But 300 and whatever days out of the year, they look generally like dudes, except for the genitalia, I guess.
Well, no, I think he's kind of said they just look androgynous. So it's like, it's an androgynous person.
No, he describes people pretty differently throughout the book. I mean, there are some people, I think most of the folks look like dudes, the way they described it. There's some that have, like you said, it's a little bit more of androgynous, feminine features, but I think, I don't know, unless I misread.
I think the one weird thing is like, yeah, he's been in this culture, and he kind of says because everyone wears like really heavy clothes that like already kind of like make their like sexuality like hidden in anyways. But he hasn't had a character that he's run across where he was like, I found that character beautiful, or I was struck by like the beauty of like
No, he
X
did.
Y.
The Weaver.
A couple times.
The Weaver. For sure, he was struck by the
And then,
beauty of the Weaver. He said it a couple times.
and then there was a, and in chapter 13, when he gets captured and he's in the back of this wagon, this person reaches out to him and trying to hook up with him. And he referred like he was very beautiful and pristine in his features. Like he was. So yeah, he's referred to a few people like that, a couple people.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's a very interesting take. It's a very interesting take
Oh, hell yeah.
on the whole role aspect. So
So it's also too like in the one chapter on like sexuality, like it kind of like just like straight up erases like homosexuality, which is like seems like really weird from like like okay, I'm gonna try to do this like book that's like really like open minded, but then I'm just gonna erase like homosexuality. I'm just like that's not very woke, yo.
But no, you're right. He does because it's when when they were talking about how they thought that the race was like actually just a genetic experiment that they just abandoned, and part of it was when one becomes male, the other one becomes female, and there's super rare instances, but it's very frowned upon in society where camera happens between a male and a male or a female and a female. You're right. I didn't catch on that the first time, and I was like, oh, meh. And then, yeah, you mentioned that it's very, you're right. For a society that's very fluid in their gender norms, for that to then be, like, taboo, felt very kind of weird.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. I can't really, speak to a lot of that because obviously that's, not an area where I'm super like, experience that truth. But yeah, I just thought it was interesting, because like I'm sure a lot of people are like, a lot of gay people are like, I 100% like being a guy, and I 100% like being a guy that's into guys, and to like erase that aspect of me, I don't see myself as a woman. I see myself as a guy that loves guys. I just thought it was interesting just to like kind of erase that aspect of it and say, oh well, that's a very tiny minority at the very least.
But when you think about it, I mean, how many dudes, especially like what we would consider like the douchebags, right, consider themselves, I'm a guy that likes chicks, and you're erasing that identity in the book as well. So in a way, yeah, kind of dealt with that in a very awkward way, I suppose, the homosexuality aspect, but it's along the same lines of what they were doing with the gender aspect from a normal heterosexual kind of way too.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, well, so yeah. Does this book remind anyone of other books they've read?
No.
no,
Can't say I've ever read anything like this before.
no, this is a very unique literary experience for me.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, like Dune brings like the political, social kind of thing into it, but not to this kind of like anthropological level.
There you go. I believed in you. I didn't get that word out.
But yeah, not to that level. It's I mean, I love the games that are kind of based around that, finding out about the societies and finding about like that kind of stuff. But yeah, no, I never read books on this before. It's odd, but it's kind of different and refreshing to a point.
Yeah. So that's how you norm. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Hyperion, which was really good. Dan Simon's. That's an interesting book about like a group of people going to like a different world, and like they all kind of like have like this adventure, like with like this like strange creature that's on the world, and like they all kind of like tell their story. And one of the stories particularly like kind of reminded me of like the foretellers, because there's like a mysticism aspect of it. And then like the other like there's lots of sci-fi first contact ish in like the culture series by Ian M. Banks as well. But yeah.
Well, one thing it kind of, and when you talk about like how society then identifies with like sexual stuff, when you look at the Haldeman novels, right? The oh Christ, the Forever War, and there's like Forever Peace. Like one of them, I can't remember which one. I think it was Forever War, because I started rereading it again. When they go and operate these machines, these war machines that they have to operate, they operate them like it's kind of like the fucking one movie. God damn it. I don't know. You're having multiple people operate this robot, and you have to do it in like a mind meld kind of way, and it brings the sexuality out of it, and it's really weird. You're having like a man have to intermingle with a woman's mind, and they all of a sudden like switch roles, and they're the same. It's odd. You'd have to read it, but it kind of addresses that whole sexuality thing in a very interesting way as well.
Yeah.
Indeed. It'll be interesting to see how this book ends.
Yeah, I'm interested to push on through and see what's the big deal.
I don't think it's gonna like end. I don't think there's like an ending to it.
I do want to know if he accomplishes his mission.
Well, you know he does in a way, right? I mean, you know, in 5 years they join, but it's the path to get to that point.
Well, will he be alive to do it?
Yeah. Will it be because of his actions or whatever? Yeah.
Yeah. Point.
So, I guess we'll revisit this in 2 weeks or
Weeks-ish.
2 weeks-ish.
I'm kind of looking forward to the next book too. I'm excited. And I don't know. That's my recommendation for the next book, but you can do what you want with it. I'm probably going to read that one no matter what.
I need some action.
Yeah, that's the thing too. Is like I feel like reading like 2 books back to back that were like kind of like a little bit more kind of like message books or like social books or like kind of little had more stuff to say. But yeah, I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't mind like kind of like a little bit more of like a plot driven book.
Dude, straight. Have you guys read The Expanse yet?
Yeah, we're both big Expanse fans.
Never mind.
We're big.
I was gonna say if you haven't, let's do that because that is fucking
we're
awesome.
Deep. We're deep. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I just like saying that.
And dude, when they did the show, they freaking picked the perfect actress for her.
That's one casting choice
That was
they did.
just fucking
They
spot
did
on.
well. I think they fucked up on everybody else, but
Yeah, for sure. Holden was definitely not who I pictured for Holden, and
Oh,
Naomi is not right either.
what's his name? Otis? Not Otis.
Amos?
Miller.
Amos. Jesus Christ. It's been too long. But Amos. I was pissed at Amos.
Amos was too pretty. However, as the show went on, I actually kind of grew to like that character choice.
He was too small. Like I just imagine like not necessarily a big huge guy, but I just imagine it.
No,
being...
I kind of pictured someone like your barber, actually. Dude,
Right.
fucking jacked. But
like my bar.
but like jacked, but like kind of that really intimidating. I mean, the one thing that the character in the show does, he's got the crazy eyes, pretty much spot on.
Yeah.
I think he's got kind of like the blank crazy eyes going, but yeah, he's not big enough and bald enough.
I get
Dude, it's Wolverine. Wolverine. You gotta have a small package. So speaking of like Wolverine casting, like I've heard like people say that like they want to either cast like Jon Snow or like even the craziest pick I've had is someone said they wanted to do the Daniel Radcliffe Harry Potter.
No.
Because they were like, that guy can get like super jacked and he would be like really small and like he would just be like crazy. But like I think the Jon Snow thing is better. Like get a guy that's like under 6 foot.
No. What was the one that someone just posted the other day where they put him in the Wolverine combat outfit? God, I cannot fucking remember names for the life of me tonight.
But no, if they use Harry Potter, every time he pulls his clothes out, his claws off, I think I'd hear him say "Leviosa."
Sharp opinions.
No,
Patronum.
no, the guy's got to be a fucking badass. You can't do a Daniel Radcliffe; it won't work. You might as well, if you're gonna do Daniel Radcliffe, you might as well put Rupert Grint in Wolverine then. You know, fucking Ron.
It's the whole like the guy from Twilight though being Bruce Wayne now, right? It's like, obviously that guy has showed us he's got some range and he's got some other stuff like he can do, and it's
I like someone. Yeah, who it was? Tom Hardy. I could see Tom Hardy in the role.
Might be a little too old. I don't know.
maybe a little, but he would have the chops to pull it off.
Yeah. Too bad he's Venom.
Eh, you know,
Yeah.
is Venom are
Yeah,
Venom and freaking X-Men ever really gonna cross paths?
I think you're about to see something pretty crazy with the next Spider-Man movie.
Maybe. I mean,
Hey,
Doc
gentlemen,
Ock's
I
coming
hate to,
back, so
I hate, I hate to do this, but I'm getting a bunch of work texts, so I think I need to
oh
do some
shit.
work. I need to get online. But hey, well, I'll see you guys in about 2 weeks. So I appreciate the conversation, and again, I'll get some antacids and some Pepto Bismol, and I'll push through the rest of this book.
And some
No, you-
whiskey.
KY, so you can fit it all in there.
Yeah. All right, we'll tell you what. We'll end the stream on this lovely lubricated point.
Just keep on.
All right, guys. Thanks for anybody who's joined. If you want to join up, Middle Aged Nerds is our group. Find us on Facebook, Twitch, and YouTube. We're gonna be starting to drop some vids, so check us out. All right, guys. Have a good night.